Hi, I'm Melissa. Welcome to Wed Worth It. We're going to have transparent conversations around budgets and walk through the emotional journey that is wedding planning. We're going to discuss the value of investing in meaningful moments and the joy that comes from creating an experience for yourselves and your loved ones. We talk to newly married couples to find out, was it worth it? Hi, I am here with Tatiana, and she is going to share all about her experience with getting married overseas in Europe, specifically in Capri, Italy.
Yes.
So yes, take a second, introduce yourself. Tell me about how you and your husband met, and how you decided to choose Italy.
Yeah, sure. So it's a really great story, but first and foremost, I'm Tatiana. I live and work in New York City. So does my husband, obviously. We met at a bar many
Oh,
years ago. He didn't live in New York. I kind of convinced him to take a job here, and that's when we were able to kind of start our relationship more on official terms. And we have gone to Italy a couple of times. We were actually there for a friend's wedding, and I kind of dragged him to this place called Capri. And I had been there years before with
mm,
my family. I have family in Naples, Italy, and I had this just magical memory of the island. And I love sharing food and destinations. I love sharing with people. It's really important to me. And I dragged him there begrudgingly. He was like, I don't want to get on the boat. I don't want to do this. He was so just against it. I'm like, I promise. I think you'll
it's
really
worth
like
it.
it. It's worth it. Let's just go. So begrudgingly, I dragged him there. And within like 24 hours, he was like, this is the best place in the world. The
Mm,
food's, it's just, there's something in the air. So we had gone back a number of times. And when we got engaged, I had no preconceived notions. He had no preconceived notions about, um, you know, where do we get married? He was thinking
yes.
maybe Atlanta. I'm from New York, so I was thinking maybe New York or New York City. And we talked a little bit about it. I had always known in my mind I wanted to be on the water, like physically on the water. That was really
Yes.
important to me. And I'm a little bit more of a creative, so I have this brain that I just had this vision in my mind, and nothing in New York was really speaking to that. Also, a
Mm,
lot of the venues there are, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but they're a little bit more bare bones. You would have to put so much more into a floral budget or that
yes.
arrangement. And rather
Blank
than dressing,
slates.
exactly, rather than dressing something up, I wanted to just choose something that has this just natural beauty and energy to it. So that's how we eventually landed on our favorite beach club in Capri. It's on the local side called Anna Capri. It's basically just means up. Um,
Up.
and
Sounds a really
very,
beautiful word for
very
up.
literal.
So we went to Capri in May.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So
Yes.
you're familiar.
Yes, it
So you
was.
might have actually gone to the venue. It's on kind of the opposite side of the island. It's like a 20-minute drive, and it's
Okay.
stunning. You go to watch the sunsets there. And my sister and her husband said, you have to get, an aperitivo and go for the sunset. And
Mm,
we did that first time that we visited there. It was a super cloudy day, but we stayed and we had dinner. It was a phenomenal dinner. But as we were finishing up, the skies kind of opened up, and it was
oh,
just like this most beautiful romantic experience. And ever since then, I think we've just had this picture in our minds of it, and so we've kept going back. That's how we landed on the location. We
okay.
really went back and forth because we know that it is such a commitment for people to get there. You're taking time off of work. It's not a cost effective location, so that
Correct.
certainly
If
that certainly
worth
came into
it.
the decision making process about how will our guests feel. And something that was really important to me was
Mm,
having making sure that our guests had a really good time.
I
um,
love that. The
yeah,
experience,
yeah,
providing like your favorite people with a beautiful experience.
yeah,
I love that.
absolutely, yeah. So we kind of just fell in love with that's eventually how we got there. We went back and forth. We visited some venues. We explored what was local to us, but at the end of the day, it just paled in comparison to that,
Yeah,
magical memories that we had.
absolutely. I totally understand that. I mean, and if it's so special to you, that place it's gorgeous beyond words
Yeah,
anyways. So to
yeah,
have it be meaningful to you too as a couple on
right.
top of that, like wow.
Right. Rather than like, a room in Brooklyn or
Yeah.
Long Island City
Here's
that,
some
we've never
exposed
been to
brick.
before.
Yeah. Okay, so when you decided that that was going to be your location, how long from then until the actual wedding? Like, what was that engagement or that planning period for
Yeah, so we
the
were engaged
destination?
for a little under 2 years, but like 2 months, I think. And I
Okay.
didn't really do anything for the first 6 months. I think I was just, analysis paralysis. Do we want to get to New York?
Yes.
Whatever. Once I started planning, it was like April. So it was about a year and a half, the
Okay.
full planning process. As I said earlier, I'm like type A. I, work in corporate America. So I, had my spreadsheets and I was really organized. And one of my girlfriends gave me a really great tip that she said, reach out to your vendors first and then contact your wedding planner. And that seems like the opposite of what most people should do. I will
Yes.
say the planner was super helpful in connecting us with certain vendors that we
Okay.
weren't aware of or didn't know, but the amount of pure research that I did to find the photographer that I just absolutely fell in love with his work.
Yes.
The other vendors, but the planner was super helpful in kind of filling those gaps.
How did you start your research for those vendors? Were they all in Italy? Did you bring anybody back from New York, or
Yeah,
how did that
everyone
start?
was local, so I
Okay.
did a lot of research on Instagram. Amount of stalking I did on other girls who had gotten married there. It's a
Yes.
Celebrity hotspot. So kind of finding out, okay, who did they use and what's like if there is
Okay.
comparable, or can I afford the vendor that they selected. So that was kind of came into the decision making process as well.
Okay, real quick before, because I have like so many more follow-up questions. What
Yeah.
was your original budget?
Our original budget, which was, in hindsight, it's laughable. It was,
Okay.
I think we said about 65
Okay.
USD. So there's the, euro conversion as well, but we said
Sure.
65, and we thought we could really do it for 65,000.
Okay. When did that become unrealistic to you?
Things very quickly went off the rails.
Okay.
So as I said before, the guest experience was so important to me, and I wanted people to have a really great time, and I wasn't going to ask people to travel to another country and not give them a really good experience.
Yes.
So where things started to balloon was adding on events. So if we had
Okay.
just had our wedding, we maybe could have stayed in a healthy budget, but
Okay.
we had welcome drinks the day before. So we rented out this beautiful space. So we rented out the entire space. It's a lemon grove. It was absolutely stunning, kind of iconic Italy experience. We did beverages and just light appetizers, kind of light bites. For
Okay.
2 hours. They actually let us stay a little bit longer, which was really, really sweet of them. So
they're so lovely there.
They were like, please drink more. We're like, sure.
Oh, okay.
So that we did that for all of our guests. We had about 75 people join us. And so, it was per person. So that started to balloon cost out a little bit.
Okay. So that was my question too about the guest list. So was it always, you said 75?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So was it always 75, or did it start higher, or did it start lower and then go up?
We invited about 114 people.
Okay.
We knew some people,
Yeah.
couldn't make it, medical considerations, availability, stuff like that. So we kind of knew who would say yes or no. I think in my head, once again, my prediction was, we'll probably get about 55 people. We're not going to have that many people want to travel across, and we had an excess of that, which I think in the moment we were having a little bit of a panic, like, oh my goodness, from a financial standpoint. But we had to kind of remind each other, like, this is like the best problem to have, that people want to come and celebrate this and be in this moment with us. So we had to kind of like, we did a little bit of a reality check, like, no, this is a really great problem to have. And we're so fortunate and in a position that we had help from our families, which was really nice. Not everyone has that.
Yes.
And we also work, a lot, so we can afford these things. And we, we both are very committed to our career. So we were able to afford that. And I know certain people have taken out loans, for example, to, have the wedding of their dreams. That was something that was not an option for us. We both decided we don't want to go into debt for this. But, our wedding is certainly important, but our, financial security is also more important to us. So that was a conversation.
I've been hearing that a lot. Like we're going to have to adjust our budget, but also we want to make sure that we're going into our marriage happy with where we are at and not in debt because of a wedding. Right. So do you have any tips if people were find themselves in a similar position? Yeah. Like, oh, this is going to be more than we thought.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you just have to ruthlessly prioritize what you want. So we made a list. We each made a separate list of what was really important to us. So like my list was like having a little bit more creative. I was like, the scenery is really important. But I actually didn't care about the florals so much. Which is funny in hindsight, but I was really focused on the guest experience. So not running out of alcohol, ensuring that the food was really good quality. Yes. So that was kind of my priority ranking. I think this is just like a husband thing. He just put like DJ.
I don't know why that is like on brand. We just care about the party, and that we love that. Like we need that vibe
which
too.
Is totally part of the guest experience. I will say, and he was iconic. Our DJ was probably the most complimented thing from our wedding. Was people were like, I don't want to go to the bathroom because I don't want to miss the next song, and he really did such a wonderful job and kept the party going, which is what I think we were really most excited about. So that I think. We ranked priority from like what we care a lot about to what we care the least about, probably like, paper invites, although I said I didn't care about it. But then as I started to look a little bit more, that's also where you get that like budget creep of you think in your head, oh, I'll just go on Minted or, I'll DIY, excuse me. I'll get scrappy with certain aspects of it. And then I started looking and then I realized, I fell in love with this. So that's another thing that you'll see that budget creep. So doing as much research on the front end so you don't have that kind of change in expectation when you get there is important.
What did you start to fall in love with as far as like the stationery piece? I'm curious to hear about that. Like what was it really like?
So at first I was like, whatever, you could put it on a Post-it, whoever wants to come, they're going to come. It's going to go in the trash. I kept telling myself these things that I've heard other people say. And then I started thinking, well, this really sets the mood for the wedding and it sets the tone. And I was thinking about, the flat lay photos that brides get with their ring and their, the shoes and the sunglasses or whatever. And I was thinking about, I want my invite on there. So I wanted to be representative of the wedding and really kind of setting the tone that it's a little bit more of a formal attire. So I went from throw it on a flashcard or a Post-it in my head to, but I will say for brides out there are a lot of great stationery options that are cost effective. I used a company out of Australia and the Australian dollar versus the USD actually really worked out in our favor at that time, but it was such a phenomenal experience. I actually met with the owner of the company and she kind of did a semi-custom design for us.
Okay.
Which was a little bit of an extra fee, but it still stayed below where my budget had creeped up to, and it still was beautiful. So.
Post-it notes. Were the flat lay photos what you had hoped for?
Yeah, stunning, beautiful. Yep, I had selected a like blush pink dress instead of white. It's a little bit untraditional, but I wanted to do something a little bit more, a little different. So I wanted the, invitations to kind of have like a nod to that a little bit, but also have like kind of the more celestial vibes that we were going for. So we were very happy with them.
So, and also a question, because it's a destination wedding, did you need to include more pieces within that invitation suite, like for logistic purposes, or how did that work for your guests?
That's funny that you ask that. So we did, I had three kind of like, sheets of information in there. So one was the, formal invite. Another I did, she was able to custom design like a custom map and then put a heart where each location and for each 3 events were, which was just like So
So
wonderful.
sweet. Yes.
And then we had like an itinerary also. And then on top of that, because as I was saying before, I just wanted people to have an easy, good experience. I actually created in Canva, I created like a guest guide.
Oh, we love
So
Canva.
for, yeah, so for each event, I was able to say like, here's what you can expect. It was really important that people don't wear like, spiked or stiletto heels to certain events. Like you were on cobblestone,
Yes.
you were
Yes.
walking 20 minutes. Please save yourself. Pack your
Don't do
espadrilles
it.
or block
Grab
heels
some.
or wear flats. So
Yes.
that information was on there, as well as directions and instructions, because it's not always super easy to navigate, especially on the island. It's not always in Google Maps or super straightforward, or
No.
maybe someone's spelling something different because Italian's not your first language. So
Yes.
it was really important to me to make sure that it was easy for everyone and no one felt very frustrated by the fact that they're in a foreign country or their feet hurt and they're not able to have a good time and enjoy themselves.
Were there a decent amount of guests who had never been to Italy before?
I think about half.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of people made a vacation. We kept joking, like, thanks for coming on a forced vacation, because they did Rome, they did a couple, they tacked on additional things. And, there's always going to be the guests that complain about things or are unhappy with certain decisions or stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, you just have to do what's right for you and kind of block out that noise. You'll have people that are, this was so hard to find, or this place is so expensive, or, my feet hurt, or whatever their complaints are. And you just kind of have to
let that go.
Yeah.
You're always going to have some people who have something to complain about.
Of course.
But for the most part, I can only imagine it was the most magical weekend. So the events, you were saying, that's when it started to get a little bit like, the budget. So
yeah. So we tacked on events. So in my mind, it was like, well, we must do 3 events for people. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah, where did that come from?
No idea.
So it was like welcome, wedding, and then something else?
So we did a recovery day after, which I really didn't like post around too much, because everyone's in their bathing suits and whatnot. But so we did welcome drinks the first night for just 2 hours to make sure everyone gets there and has a good experience there. The first night, the second day was obviously the wedding. And then the third day, we did a recovery beach day, kind of recovery day, they call it, but it was a beach day at one of the vendors or venues at the beach. So that was so fun, really nice. I think they were expecting us to come and like drink a lot. So that's why the cost ballooned out because of that. But I think everyone was dancing until 2:00 in the morning and probably wasn't feeling so lively the following day. So, but they did, food and bev for, I think it was like about 6 or 6.5 hours, I believe, which was, it
That's
was
perfect.
a full day event. So that was really great as well.
Do you feel like because you had those different events, you had 3 full events, including the wedding, that you were able to spend more time with the guests that did come? Did it take pressure off the day of the wedding?
Yes. And we tried to make it a point to go and speak to every single person individually. And we were lucky. Our guest list wasn't so huge that we couldn't speak to certain people. So during dinner, in between courses, we went around, we kind of made it around to half the table. So we did one very long table, we made it around half,
I love that.
Stopped and then did the next half. So we were at least just able to speak to everyone. I wish I could have spent more time with everyone, but I think everyone has that kind of regret because the day just really does go so quickly.
It goes by so fast, so fast, and you're being pulled in a bunch of different directions. I feel like primarily by your photographer, but like
the first night I was complimenting him. I was like, "Oh, we love you so much. We love your work, whatever." And he's like, talk to me after the wedding day, because he knew, I was like another photo, but it was that portion was so worth it. He dragged us up to he got us up on kind of like the rocks near our venue and just got some really, really beautiful photography. So it was completely worth it. But I was like so sad because I was like, I want to be at cocktail hour, but I'm glad we did that. Otherwise, I don't think we'd have any pictures from the day.
It's yeah, it goes by so quick. Your photographer always wants to do more photos.
Of course.
There's just
And I'm glad he did. I'm
yeah.
so glad that in the moment I was like, not another, my face hurts. Like
Yes.
I'm seeing, cross-eyed now, but I'm
Yes.
so glad that he kind of, kept us on schedule at the same time, but,
Sure.
was able to kind of release us after a
Yes.
certain point.
Yes. I'm always like, just let me, okay, we're gonna do just two more and then
Yep.
you're good. And then you're gonna go to cocktail hour. Okay, so back to your planner. You said you kind of pulled them in towards the end
Yeah.
of the planning process. So what was that like?
In Italy specifically, I just heard from so many different people, my planner did X, Y, and Z, my planner did this. And because I had done so much work ahead of time, so much research on Instagram and online and Reddit forums and all of that good stuff, because I had kind of done all of that work, I was like, oh, I just need a day of coordinator. Couldn't be more wrong about that. I so appreciate how helpful she was, because sometimes the vendors wouldn't respond to me. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to follow up 17 more times to get a response, where she can WhatsApp them or, knock on their door, because they were all local to that island.
Okay.
So that was incredibly helpful as well, to have her there to do that. She kept everything on track and on schedule, but I did reach out to certain vendors first, because I think mostly I was nervous that someone else would snap them up, and instead, when I first reached out to the venue, I was like, oh, we have plenty of time. I'm a year and a half in advance.
Nothing but time.
And 2 weeks passed and I hadn't responded to them or signed the contract yet. I was still kind of reviewing it. We were still like, okay, if we sign this, we're committed. And they reached back out and said someone reached out for the date that you wanted, and that was like, done. We're committing, signed on the dotted line, and that really put a spark under me to say, like, okay, if other brides are doing this, then I really need to get on it, because there's only one DJ really on the island, or one DJ service, I should say, on the island.
Sure.
There's two great florists on the island. There's, only 7 wedding planners on the island, or at least in the Amalfi Coast area. So it kind of lit a fire under me that, like, I need to start reaching out to people ASAP. It did take me a little bit longer to identify a planner, which is also why I kind of already established relationships with some of the other vendors, just because I was so nervous and I had that kind of urgency.
How far out was it when you brought on the planner?
I want to say it was a little more than a year out, so maybe like a year and a month or so. I think I reached out to her in like the late summer, I want to say, to get the contract signed. And something interesting about
Tell me everything.
Something interesting about planning in another country is each country has a different timeline and different specifications. So in the US, I think we like to do things a little bit, the earlier the better, get the deposit in, like, let's start talking, let's start planning. And this is just, Italian culture, but like, domani, like, we'll worry about it tomorrow kind of thing. And I was like, no, I want to worry about it now, just because my work schedule, I was trying to plan around my work schedule. I had a lot of conferences the summer leading up to the wedding. I, wanted to be focused on different things and kind of have what I could have checked off the list checked off. And that was not the case at all.
Yeah.
So
very different cultural.
And to add to the mix, the month of August, at least in Italy and many European countries, I think they kind of like take a break. They have, a holiday, I think it's like August 14th. And they really do take time to recover and recoup for the rest of the year, which I think is beautiful, by the way. But having a wedding the first weekend of September after a month of not hearing from anyone in August,
it's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, so we had to do a lot of, there was kind of a lot of back and forth, and I tried to front load as much as possible, but it's just certain vendors were not. They're like, we have 7 weddings before you. Like, take a back seat and we'll get you when we get to you, which I get.
The wedding is next week. We will be concerned. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That doesn't feel great when you're the bride that's like, excuse me.
So that was something that was interesting, where I think in the US it's a little bit it's a different kind of timeline, different schedule, certainly. But there are just certain, decisions that need to be made or certain, information that you're not going to get 6 months in advance in February before your wedding in September, like our confirmed guest list, and we had people drop
Sure.
out, you're kind of like going back and forth with that, which is completely normal. But that was one kind of nuance that I noticed about Italy specifically.
That's a quite like a little bit of a hurdle to overcome, or like
It was fun.
have to adjust to an already like a new
because
situation.
because my work schedule was a little bit more chaotic. My husband stepped in and was like, "I've got this," and just ran with it. And I was like, "Thank God," because otherwise, I don't think we would have had a wedding.
Yeah. We love that. We share shoulder
the responsibility.
Yeah.
And then for the 2 years prior, I had been doing everything, so I was like, "You take the baton, man, and you run with it."
I trust you. You got this. Slow clap.
And we kind of tried to like divide responsibilities as much as possible. And if your priority is the music, can you reach out to the DJ?
Yes.
Can you get this booked? And that was super helpful, as well as like the way that my husband processes things is he likes to like think about it a little bit, formulate a plan in his brain, and then come back to me. Whereas I'm just like, let me verbalize everything and we'll work through it together. So that was a great, like, just, relationship building, but also it was really helpful to say like, okay, we're going to talk through these things, and he wants to go take a beat, come back with what, he wants to focus on. And I thought that was really helpful to kind of have that understanding of like, okay, I have to talk through things for our wedding, whereas you need a beat to kind of
to like internalize and process that, and then
absolutely
come back. I relate to it.
And then if you totally, and a lot of people are like that. I'm just not. And then if you care about something a lot, just do it. Torture that I put myself through to say, should I do this? Should I not do this? Should I? And
what's one example?
It's a silly example, but I think it made a huge difference. I care about the details. My mom was an event planner, and I just grew up thinking about the little details that she would put into certain things that made such a huge difference, or got the compliments, or it really just made a difference for the event. So we were really trying to figure out, how do we bring New York City to Capri, and how do we kind of represent New York? And I was kind of going back and forth about it, and talking to my hairdresser actually about it. And she gave me a really fabulous idea. She said, why don't you ship coffee, the New York City coffee, the iconic, "It's our pleasure to serve you" coffee cups. Why don't you ship those to Italy? And it was such a great idea. I didn't end up shipping them. I ended up packing them in a third suitcase.
Oh, okay.
Along with our menus and some like, sunscreen and other like, hair clips and stuff for our beach day. So I ended up putting that in a suitcase and bringing it with us. And I'm so glad that I did, because everyone was like, "Tatiana, you have enough to worry about. Just get there, have a good time."
Yes.
No, I really, so I primed that they got there within a day. I had to order 2 sets because the first set that I ordered was back ordered.
Oh my goodness.
It seemed like at the time just so much trouble to go through for cups, out of everything for cups. But it made a huge difference. We did espresso martinis kind of while we were cutting cake. So we put the espresso martinis in those coffee cups, and it was really great. I'm so glad we did it. And it was funny. My husband was like, "I'm glad you did that too." And he gave me the most shit about it. So I'm glad that he appreciated it. And I kind of just like brought it home to New York City, which I thought was
I love that you were able to tie that together. Yeah, that's so special. Okay, so tell me about the actual wedding day. How did it go? It was
chaos, but I feel like everyone's wedding. No, I've never heard a bride be like, "Oh, I was so relaxed." It's pure chaos. I think just start the day, and I'm already a control freak to begin with, but I'm sitting, our room was facing the ocean. It's just beautiful, but I'm sitting there getting my hair and makeup done, and I am just silent because I see this giant rain cloud sheet coming towards us, and we have no rain plan.
So
my mom is like, "What's the rain plan and where are we going? And she's an event planner, and I kind of had to cut her out of the process a little bit because I was like, if I include you too much, you're gonna drive me crazy.
Yes, yes.
Because she has very specific opinions about what a wedding should look like, and I wanted to kind of honor what my husband and I wanted to do.
Sure.
So we were trying to find that the balance, right?
Sure.
And everyone, I think, goes through that period of like, how much do you want to involve the parents or, you know, siblings or whatever. So she's like, what's your wedding plan, Tatiana? I could just hear her saying like, I told you so. Changed fair. She's got a point. She's done this a million times before, and it's just that like kind of I don't want to hear it response that I said, you know, we'll figure it out, it'll be fine. But in my head I was like, oh my gosh, like if it rains. So it did rain a little bit that morning. It stopped raining. We had a little bit of overcast, so our photos, obviously, you know, the photos I think still turned out really great, but it was like that indirect sunlight would have been a little bit better probably. So our photos, at least getting into our transportation, looked a little bit more washed out just because of the light consideration, but it held off. Thank God, for the entire rest of the night. So I'm like, so starting out on this note of like, I'm so anxious and I'm so worried about this. And so once we got going with the photos, it really just, the day flew by. Everyone gives the unsolicited advice that the day goes by really fast, and try to be present and try to like, you know, actually speak to people. And and I agree with that advice. It was the best advice I got. I don't know how much I listened to the advice because the day really did truly fly by. But that was definitely a piece of advice that I appreciated getting, so I could kind of slow myself down. And it went so smoothly. I mentioned when I got there, the florals were not what I had thought or what I had agreed to. So that was a little bit of the other kind of like, oh
no. So there were two oh no moments.
Two larger oh no moments. But I just kind of took a beat. I went by myself into the venue after we got through the ceremony. I stood in front of a fan because it was, 90 degrees and 100% humidity that day. And I was just like, I'm just going to take a moment to be at peace with myself. And then we're going to go out. We're just going to accept it and enjoy the rest of the day. And I'm so glad that I just kind of like took that moment just to be like, okay, this is not what we thought we were walking into, and that's all right. And we're going to move on. But that's the other consideration when you're getting married in another country. Maybe they don't speak English. You have to be okay with things not being perfectly exactly how you had it in your mind.
And too,
and that's going to happen.
Yeah. And I think what you said is good though, as well, that you took a moment to be like, you've been planning this day for 2 years. Yeah. And something's not quite right. Like, I think you are absolutely allowed the space to take a moment in front of a fan and recalibrate and then go forth, Yeah. So I think that was so smart and so gentle to do, like, for yourself that day.
Yeah. I couldn't let it ruin, like, the rest of the day. So that was kind of the other, like, oh, okay, moment that we had, but it's all right. And I kind of had to talk to myself a little bit.
And I think, like you said, you're really type A and like things in an order. And I think, like, even on top of that, it's your wedding day. So people that don't even tend to be that way are going to find themselves being that way. So allowing yourself some, like, more than I feel like you hear, and I say too to my couples, like, something's going to go totally not quite up, but it's different when it actually hits. And so to also, I think that advice, knowing that it is likely to happen, but then also knowing you to give yourself some space to be like,
absolutely. Take a breather.
We're going to take a moment and we're back and we're here.
And stuff like that at the end. Like, I was kind of talking to friends about it after the fact. I was expecting this. This is not what I was expecting. They were like, oh, I didn't even notice. And that made me think, like, okay, you know what? I'm going to notice every single little detail because I planned every single little detail. Yes. So of course I'm going to kind of hang on to those things. But at the end of the day, people are not really, unless someone else is planning a wedding, probably not looking at the florals or, the chairs that you used or the silverware, all of that good stuff.
Yes. Okay, so which kind of brings me back to if people were to look at Pinterest or something and get inspo.
Yeah.
I want to know, first of all, what we said the original budget was $65K?
Yes.
Which is now humorous. Okay, so what did the wedding end up costing?
So I was informed by my husband that the wedding ended up costing $123.
Okay.
Not including any of like the rings or anything like that. So we didn't
Okay.
include that in the budget, and we didn't include the invitations in the budget either. So
Okay.
that includes all 3 days.
Okay.
So I think, for a 3-day event,
Absolutely.
it's not that bad.
I agree.
But when you hear that number initially, it's like, oh my goodness, especially from where we thought we could start from. So yeah, it was 123.
I think for a destination wedding, did that include any travel or like all of your travel, or?
It didn't include our travel, but we did throw our accommodations in there just for the week of the wedding.
Okay.
So we stayed in a hotel, or this beautiful hotel, for a week. So we did include that in the budget, but it was a drop in the bucket compared to everything else.
Absolutely. Okay, so if you were to give a piece of advice to past Tatiana.
So we've had this my husband and I have kind of had like a little bit of a post-mortem. I think because my sister gave me this advice and I kind of ignored it. I think we were probably a little bit too generous or trying to do too much for our guests. And I'm grateful that we did it. And I'm so glad that we, tried to give them that experience. But we gave a lot of people, like a lot of family members plus ones that were like, did we need to do that?
Sure.
And the beach day, which was the third event, we probably didn't need to do in hindsight. So that would have saved us a huge chunk of money.
Okay. What can I ask specifically what chunk of money that would have been?
It was, I think, about 15 USD. So it's a sizable amount.
Would you have changed that to just be like nothing at all, or a brunch, or like something like smaller?
Yeah.
In hindsight?
I think maybe either something smaller or, hey, we're going to be at this beach club. Please come join us. Unfortunately, unfortunately, we had to either block out an entire floor or nothing. So it would have been a little bit messy had we done nothing. So we kind of talk about that back and forth a little bit. And then I think, my husband said he would have been a little bit more selective with the guest list probably, which I was ruthless with my side. So
that's on him.
He's such a nice guy too. So that totally tracks for him. And he would never want to offend or upset anyone. Whereas I was like, making cuts left and right. But
that's so
especially with certain seeing certain guests' reaction to certain things, or hearing the complaints or stuff like that. You're like, oh gosh, if they only knew how much per person this was, maybe they might feel a little bit differently about it. But some of my girlfriends who are getting married around the same time were very supportive and very kind of well aware, because they're going through the process too. And that's that, it was so funny. I found a receipt from my mom and my dad's wedding. It was printed, pre-computers, that's how long ago they got married, obviously. And it was the cost of the cake, or it was the cost of something. And it was, I think the whole wedding, my mom was saying, was I don't know, hundreds or maybe a couple of $1,000s. So just the cost of things obviously has gone up so much. And I do think it's so important and so helpful to have conversations like this, because when I started planning, I had no idea how much things were going to cost. And it's a subject that's not talked about very frequently. And I think people keep that information really guarded. like, I don't know what any of my friends have spent on
Mm.
anything for their
Yeah.
wedding. And obviously I didn't, outright ask, but that would have been such helpful information for me to know just going into this, like, okay, this is where I should be allocating money or would like to be allocating money based on our priorities as a couple.
Yeah, it feels a little bit of a taboo topic that
Totally.
I am trying to dispel a little bit, as much as you can, because every wedding's different and everybody
Yeah.
has different priorities and different budgets, but it's, to go online and see these beautiful weddings and then to not come out and say
Yeah.
25K.
Yeah.
And then to start planning a wedding and be like, wait a minute, that's
just the venue. Yeah, that doesn't include anything else. That was just for food, for example. I think that's so helpful to know. That would have helped past me a lot to say, like, okay, this is actually the cost of things. Whereas going in, we just had a different idea, and luckily my sister kind of shared her budget a little bit and but she got married in Catskills in New York, so it's obviously very different, and they did 2 days, I think, instead of a 3-day event, so obviously the cost is going to be a little bit different.
Sure.
But I thought that was a little helpful, but just adjusting for like the region and having to think about transportation and all of these other things associated with a destination wedding, and you kind of get that, like, should we elope and not have a wedding and buy a house, or should we have the wedding? And we, candidly, we went back and forth a lot during the planning process on should we just allocate this money towards something else? And at first I was the one wanting to elope, and my husband was like, no, it's the wedding's not for us, it's for our family, and this ability to celebrate with everyone. And then once I started planning, I'm an all or nothing kind of girl. Sure. So either I'm going 100% or zero. So once we decided we were doing the wedding, I think, my thought process was I want to go 100%, but that's where that budget creep came in, because if I want to do something, I'm going to do it correctly
and I want to do it well.
And right towards my, and to do it to the standards that I like. So that's certainly where the budget creep kind of fell in.
Okay. And this is my last question. We can chat a little bit more, but with the budget creep and going all in or nothing is, was it worth it?
Yes, I think so. Like 100%. My husband says the same thing. I think in the moment we had, all of these conflicting opinions, and kind of while in the planning process, at a certain point he was like, we should have just eloped. But once I'm like, now you tell me, we're a month out. But now that it's over and we look back on the pictures and we talk to friends that are still saying that was the best DJ ever, or that was the most fun we've had, it was really important to me that, once again, the guests had a good time, and that feedback and hearing that was really important, that they enjoyed that. So I think it was worth it. It was one of the best days of my life. I know there's so much pressure when people say it was the best day of my life. I'm saying it was one of the best days of my life, but it was beautiful. It's exactly what we wanted. We really tried to honor what we wanted to do and not give in to what other people were expecting from us, maybe, or other people's ideas of what a wedding should look like. Like, as I said, I did some non-traditional or untraditional things, wearing a pink dress instead of a white dress. So we really just tried to honor ourselves. And I think because we did that, and because we tried to block out some of the other opinions, like we didn't do a first dance, we didn't do the parent dance either, because we wanted it to be, fun. And I think we're both a little bit, we didn't want to do, we're both a little bit more private. We thought, okay, this is a little untraditional, but it's honoring what we want to do. I think because we did that, it made it worth it.
I love that. That's so great. That's really great advice, and to kind of just put blinders on. And
you have to.
You do. There's so I mean, it's just, I feel like when you get engaged, it's like this onslaught of information,
when you get married,
pressure, questions, all of these things, and it's so easy I don't know how people don't get overwhelmed. Like when I'm chatting with couples, I'm like, I'm one very small piece to a much larger puzzle. And I feel like a lot of times when I'm chatting with couples, it's just like deer in headlights. Like it's still very new. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I just want you to know it's going to be okay. It's going to be so great.
But having vendors like you, though, that's so important. Like a couple of our vendors, we said during the planning process, we're like, thank God for a DJ, thank God for a photographer. They were on top of it, professional, organized, responsive, wonderful. And that gave us space to kind of worry about the other things that we needed to give a little bit more attention to, so that the relationship that you have with your vendors is incredibly important as well, because if you trust them, then there's a lot less worry, a lot less stress. So that's also really important, as well as having that good relationship and having vendors who are professionals. They've done this a bunch. They're calm. They know what they're doing. I felt like I could put my trust in the DJ. I didn't have to check in on him because he just has done this a bazillion times. That I felt that way with our photographer, that I didn't have to, micromanage any of that or ask him any follow-up questions, because everything was there. So that was incredibly helpful for me going through that process.
And I love that you brought up, I feel like there's so much trust that has to be had in the wedding planning process on all fronts. So I think that's a big piece. I think that actually keeps coming up in these conversations is trust. And so, yes. And so I love that you touched on that. It's such an important day, and it's such a really short and really sweet phase of your life. Absolutely. And so like who you're bringing on alongside you to be a part of that journey is really important. So
absolutely. Yeah. And if you're putting that huge, in our case, huge investment behind a weekend or a day, it's so important to make sure that you have the right people on your team. And we're so lucky that we did, and we look back and it's, we laugh or smile, and it's such a fun memory. And even like we were in St. Martin this weekend, my husband was like, we had a really great wedding. I'm like, we did. So it really, I think it's worth it. I know other people prioritize different things. Other people have homes, and we live in an apartment, and we rent in New York City. So, people prioritize different things, but even within the wedding process, you can prioritize what's important to you. I have a girlfriend she's not certain if she wants to have a wedding. And I said, you're going to be happy if you do, be happy if you don't. You're going to have regret if you do, and you're going to have regret if you don't. So you have to do what was right for you and for you and your partner. Obviously, you have to just kind of honor that, and whatever that ends up being, people will want to show up for you. So that's the best advice I can give.
I love that advice. That's how we end it, is right there.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for chatting with me. It was such a joy.
This was fun.
It's so great to hear about your experience in Italy, and I think that it's so helpful. It will be so helpful for brides and engaged couples getting married, what things to consider.
Yeah, and people can do it more cheaply than I did. We knew we chose an expensive place. I think had we scaled back on certain events, and had I not had this little voice in my head that, oh no, will someone be upset that there's not 3 events?
Yes.
We probably could have done 2, and it would have been just as great. So I think, hindsight's 20/20 though. Hindsight
is 20/20, and people are still talking about it, and you provided a lovely experience for so many people that you care about. So yes, you did. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. If you were recently married, or if you know somebody who was recently married who might be super fun to chat with about their wedding planning journey and how they decided to allocate their funds and how everything came together, you can find us on Instagram at Wed Worth It. There's a form within that bio you can fill out, or just feel free to send us a DM. Thanks so much, and we'll catch you next time.